Welcome back to another SaaStock episode where we discuss SaaS success stories. My name is Matic Sujma and I run SaaStock in the region. SaaStock helps SaaS founders get traction, grow, and scale through conferences and a community of companies and VCs. Today we host Pedja Predin, VC at South Centra Ventures, the first institutional VC focused on the Western Balkans space with more than 40 million found. Pedja, thank you for joining us today.
Matic, it's a pleasure to be here and good afternoon to everyone.
So before we get deeper into the processes for startups, let's start with your story and South Centra Ventures. What are the main markets, size of the investments, and what's your main focus? Is it seed round or A rounds? Can we talk and start with this a little bit?
Perfect. So let's start first about the fund, and then I'll jump into my personal part after that. So VC Ventures has been founded in 2015, late 2015. Its predecessor fund was RSG Capital, which was focused on Slovenia and Croatia. And then VC Ventures became more institutional with the EIF and EBRD backing, and then covered more the region of the Western Balkans, so from Croatia all the way to Northern Macedonia. So the fund is 40 million euros under management. The investment period has been closed recently. We invest into 26 companies. So it's primarily seed up to Series A. So going from a couple of €100,000 per company up until 3 million. In terms of the sub-segment, the thesis, we are more agnostic. So we are looking for the best founders. But in general, we are looking for someone who can really unlock the global markets. And as part of that, SaaS B2B is actually 80% of our portfolio. So the companies in our portfolio are primarily focused on this. So I think this is quite relevant for the discussion we're going to have today. And then we also recently got the commitments for the next fund, and we're supposed to be active with it in September, October. So looking forward to meeting all of the founders in the region that I haven't met so far. And my personal story, I joined the fund about 2 years ago. I'm based in Belgrade office in Serbia, but I'm covering the entire region. So we travel quite a lot and want to ensure that all of the founders that are growing their great businesses in the region have the right connection, the right opportunity to talk to us. And previously, I used to work for a SaaS startup called Gelato from Norway, which was not an ice cream company. They actually focus on the web to print and the platform. And before that, I was at Microsoft working on corporate strategy. So my experience has been quite international. I spent about 13 years abroad before coming back to Serbia. And happy to continue the adventure with SC.
You mentioned 40 million found, and you just closed the current series. So what does it mean? Where do you get money? 40 million, and how do
the mix of investors? Some of them are EIF, European Investment Fund, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and then also we have a number of local institutions and high net worth individuals that believe in us and invested in it. So it's a mix of both.
So you take like 1 year or 2 years to close the one fund, and then you're looking for new investments. How does it work for people that doesn't?
So the investment period is about 4 years. So in 4 years, we plan to allocate the entire amount. But yeah, the fundraise process to raise the money took probably more than a year, but it's normal, I guess.
Okay. So your focus is only on the, let's say, Adriatic or Balkan region for now, 5-6 countries.
Correct. Yes. So we really have a focus towards the ecosystem here. We invested in a couple of stories where we would have a co-founder, CEO, for example, or head of sales who would be based in the US, UK, or Germany. But generally speaking, at the moment of our investment, the majority of employees need to be based in the region. So that's the setup.
So how do you see the, let's say, Western Balkan startup scene at the moment? And let's talk about SaaS B2B.
Sure. So I think that it's really improving. I think that in the past, we really had an issue with the sales teams. I mean, especially in Serbia, I would say that we didn't have qualified enterprise salespeople, enough qualified enterprise salespeople who would be able to, sell the big deals to the enterprises, to cover the entire process. And in a lot of situations, the founders who would be technical had bad experiences with some of the salespeople. So it really was something that needed to be improved. These days, we are seeing stories where the sales teams are being based in the US, UK. There is more money in the ecosystem, which allows them to open up these offices. But on the other side, we are seeing in the last couple of years more of the product-led growth and ability of companies to be able to sell through the inbound channels and the different levels of distribution, not just outbound direct, which is something that really goes as an advantage to our local teams. And also we are seeing more interest from the funds from the US or UK, and that puts kind of the bar to the higher position, and the companies are working really hard. So I would definitely say that it's a better situation than it used to be.
And it's definitely part of the SaaS B2B, so product-led growth, inbound, as you mentioned. So how should one approach the investors, and when is the right time? So is it when you have the idea? Is it when you have the MVP, when you have users, or is it when you're already talking about retention and churn rate? So when is the right time, or is it the right question to ask? It depends on the segment. It depends on the industry. What's the right approach?
Yeah. So I think there are a lot of variables in this question. So I can talk probably more from our experience and the way how we work. So how you reach out to us, it's ideally through the reference. So through someone that that knows us. We've seen that channel is probably the most effective one. However, free form reach out to our website or LinkedIn or conferences works. I mean, we really want to kind of like research all of the elements of the ecosystem and to not have any stones untouched. And then in terms of the timing, so for us, the seed, we invest primarily in the seed phase, our first check. So usually at that stage, you want to have a product and you want to have some validation through the customers and revenues. So probably some MRR that you're building up, not too much. You started the sales maybe 3 to 6 months ago. You got some feedback. You're improving the product, and you know which things work, which don't. And then we are happy to jump in, support you, and then help you go to the next level, and then build a sales organization, etc. So of course, there are ones that do the pre-seed. There are ones that focus more on the KPIs and the churn and the LTV and the CAC, but we are probably in between.
So you mentioned that you're focused more on founders, and in the pre-seed or early stage, we rarely track customer acquisition cost, the true customer acquisition cost. In my case, we didn't track it. Maybe in the second year we start tracking, because customer acquisition costs went 10x in 1 month.
I mean, it's important to show that the product actually works and there is a demand from the customers. And then, with the seed investment, you actually have the opportunity to kind of like tweak it and make sure that, in the next 12 to 18 months, the engine is really working efficiently.
Me as a founder, how should I think when I approach the investors, and then basically who are the right investors for me? In the region, we have a couple of investors, and most of them are focused on seed or A rounds. So how should I think as a founder, which investor is the right one? Is it the one that will help me solve a specific problem that I have on the roadmap in the next 12 months? You mentioned sales. So in the pre-seed round or seed round, the sales is done by the CEO, I guess. I mean, the CEO will
be done. Not sell, you're not going to hire a salesperson who is not really passionate about the product in the same way as you, as the founder, are. So yeah, I mean, I would say we as a fund, we tend to be operational, so we want to roll up the sleeves and work hard with the founders on helping them set up the go-to-market motion. Participate in the first few sales, provide feedback, help with the fundraise, help with the recruitment. You're probably not going to build the entire sales team initially, but you want to think about down the road starting with the first sales hire after you have validation, and then etc. etc. But in general, if as a founder, I think there are a couple of elements of how you choose the funds. So in addition to us, there aren't that many kind of like regionally focused funds here on the Western Balkans. There is Phil Rouge, and then there are CEE funds who are playing a more active role here. So for example, someone like Credo Ventures or Early Bird from Germany, Point Nine. But I think it's crucial that there is the funds really operate based upon the personal brand of the partner or investor who is taking that board seat. And I think it's crucial to have the right chemistry and also to have the alignment with the vision between the founder and the investor. And then the third element is, can really this investor help you to take you to the next level? And it's not always cheering and clapping on the shoulders, but it's really someone who's gonna give you the hard truth, but who's also gonna work hard with you, help you secure the tier one investor from the Silicon Valley for the next round, etc.
How do you see the spark in the eye of the early stage founders? Is it you probably, like you said, you turn every stone and check the past projects or companies that they have, but how do you see this founder really go beyond what what needs to be done? Because in the startup, in the early stage of any company, you have to work more than usual. So how do you see, okay, this guy is the right one for us, let's invest with them?
No, I think it's I would like that there is a formula, but I can talk about a couple of crucial elements that we really focus on. The first one is this persistence. Someone who really has a vision, who is not gonna sell immediately the company when he can get 2 apartments, a good car, and a boat, but someone who is not motivated by money, but really motivated by the impact and the vision. So that's definitely the crucial element. Second element that we like is to have a mix between founders, to have some that have more commercial understanding, someone who can do either sales or marketing, have the product vision, but also someone who can be more technical and engineer and deliver on it. Because when you have 2 sides of the brain, in these cases 1 + 1 is 3 or 4, but you also have more than one person as a founder who is not sleeping at night when there are issues. Also, I think that it's important that there is a cosmopolitan mindset inside the team. And I don't want to sound this as elitist, but it's really important that you as a founder can really go into the shoes of the customers. If this customer is in the US or UK, you need to understand how they operate. And that's really hard if you haven't had a chance to travel at least to some of these locations, spend some time with them, work with them, or study with them.
You mentioned the persistence and how they will spend the money. Maybe that's a tricky question, but since you live abroad for a long time, when you come back to the region, do we still have problems with priorities here? So you mentioned cars and expensive clothes, and I think based on my experience, when you go just across the border, and not mentioning USA or UK, if you go to France or Germany, you see the huge difference between the Balkan and the rest of the world. So it's really hard for us for them to understand that we are still driven really by money, which is not bad, but not in a sense that buying cars. And so for us, sorry for taking a long question, but for us, I think that raising money, it's a really important milestone, but it shouldn't be. I think it should be, okay, this is a tool. I'm driving in a car, I'm driving in this direction, and what I need to get to this direction, I need a fuel. So VC is my fuel. So I have to get, the best fuel, etc., etc. But it's not a milestone. It's not something that, okay, now your parents will be proud of. How do you see the environment? Is it improving, or we still have to
I think it's a fair point, and that brings me to one more element that I wanted to raise kind of as one of the crucial ones when we invest, and it's related to the ethics, right? Because you want to ensure that this person has the right values, and it's going to do the right thing in a very difficult situation, which might not be good for them personally at that moment. But definitely, I mean, we as a region had a lot of difficulties in the past. I like to think that people learn a lot from it. I think that the new generation is changing. I would definitely say they're bad apples, but in general, I'm always positive. We really like to stress this out to mutual conversations that we have with the founders, but we also check the references, check the past, and do the best that we can. But yeah, it's a risk that we need to take as investors also. And I definitely agree that raising a round, it's not a success. I mean, it's getting a fuel to like a jet fuel to take you to the next level, and the end goal is really the impact that you can make with that product. So really the focus on the product. And I personally, I'm not a big fan of the companies that spend 12 months doing the fundraise, because obviously the priorities are not right there, and that can really backstab them later on in the process of getting to the next level, even if they raise a lot of money immediately. I think focusing on that KPI and on the valuation ultimately might be an issue.
When raising money, what one needs to do to prepare. So let's go from before contacting the VC, or finding a VC on the conference, and then preparing. Is it the pitch deck, the processes? What else do we need to prepare to be credible to negotiate the VC deal?
I think each VC has his or her own preferences in it. I like to start with the pitch deck, so I would like to understand the product vision. And for me, the two key points I like to see for me, the two biggest question marks are if this person knows all of their numbers. So you need to know the KPIs. I mean, if you are talking about the numbers, you need to know them. And then the second element, if you don't know something, how do you react? Do you make up something? Do you lie? Or you're fair and say, hey, I'm going to come back to you. I'm not prepared, or whatever it is. So if you do those two things well, then you can prepare for the next level. So after the pitch meeting, then you need to prepare a business plan. Obviously, you need to have really proper use of funds. So how you're going to allocate the money and where it's going to take you in the next 12 to 18 months. And then in addition to that, really depends from company to company. We want to have like the product demo. We want to understand, deeply how it works, how the customers react. But also on the other side, we want to understand, the customer references. We want to see, the NPS scores, if that exists. And then, of course, the legal and financial elements. There were no bankruptcies, there are no legal issues, no liabilities, etc. So I would say these are the main elements. Sometimes, we go into one direction a bit more than the other, but starting from this, at the end of the day, if you have the right mindset and there is right chemistry, some documents and some things can be prepared during the process.
Speaking about what they will the founders, where they will spend money on, what do you usually hear from the founders? Is it, I need money urgently for hiring, I need money urgently for user acquisition, I need money for customer support? And what can you read from this reply? So let's say user acquisition in the early stages. If someone will say, I need money to pay for Google ads, maybe that's not a right idea. Find somebody that be your advocate or find your users for free at the beginning. So what are the right or wrong answers when you ask them where they will spend money?
It's a good question. I think it also talks about their resourcefulness, because if you're going to invest 80% of the round to the Google ads, I mean, probably that channel is not the best, and you're not really thinking the best way about the future. But in terms of what they're gonna spend more money, it's also driven by the background of the founder. So if if there is one founder, a CEO who is doing only sales, probably the budget is going to be more allocated towards the commercial activities. But we like to see the balance. We know that if you invest in the seed round, there are still a lot of things that need to be done on the product development, but also there needs to be really a push on the commercial side. So finding that right balance, for me, it's crucial. And then you also can understand the chemistry between those two founders and two sides of the business, tech and sales. Because if that doesn't work immediately, you're going to see it. And, it's probably one of the flags that you need to raise early on.
What are the red flags when you talk to founders? What are the couple of red flags that you say, okay, no, we are not going to invest? And you don't say it immediately on the meeting, but you say it in your head, okay, this meeting is done.
Right. So I personally don't like when people brag too much, and they really think that they know everything and they are not coachable. I would say that this coachability is something, we are humble. We know that there are a lot of things that we don't know, and we need to respect the others and every day improve. So coachability, humbleness, sometimes the dynamics between the founders. So you kind of like to pick them a little bit in the meetings and see how they would react. And these are the small points that can, always give you a story. And also lying and making up things that doesn't work well. So we prefer to, hear when people, say, hey, okay, we don't have the answer, but we need to think about it. And last but not the least, so we don't like the brags that, are unrealistic, but we also don't like when people are just, thinking too small. Because then, probably our money is not the best option for them.
The right amount of being humble and being not being too arrogant. So to have the energy to go up and to the right and not being too arrogant, not knowing what not milestone, but what rocks lies on the road.
Exactly.
Speaking about sales and hiring and development, so early stage founders usually focus on the product marketing, so growing the user base, not so much on the processes. So we tend to have processes in order, but when you get the VC, you have to set processes, you have to set your sales team and engineering team. You probably put in the Series A, definitely you put the CTO and the engineering team. So how do you advise them? How do you help companies with setting the processes?
Yeah. So I think for us, the first important process is more like on the financial side. So we want to know, where the money is going, and that needs to be structured properly. And then, as you mentioned, you have a couple of, crucial functions of the business. And what we really like to understand is there is a clear responsibility for each element and ownership, because for us, any decision that is made is better than no decision. And if you have the right person who is, making choices, it might not be correct every time, but at least, you are setting up the right things. And I think it's really step-by-step process. I don't think the company can change completely after getting the first investment. So it really needs to go step by step. So you set up the financial, you set up the first sales hire. This sales hire, needs to work closely with the founder. Founder needs to do the first 5 sales, then the next ones need to be done by the first salesperson. If this person is senior enough, he or she can hire more people afterwards, but it really needs to go step by step. Also on the product side, also on the engineering side. So, it's really a race. and there are sprints. So there are moments when the company needs to go really fast and work really hard. But we want them to structure properly the processes between the seed and Series A. So there are probably steps that you do in between, so not everything immediately. And then you also need to ensure that there are going to be fires burning all the time, and that's the role of the founder of how to kind of like prioritize, focus on some, leave others burning, and then address them between the seed and Series A.
Cool. So how do you set the KPIs? Do you set KPIs together with founders when they raise money? And do you have like regular stand-ups weekly, monthly? How do they report to you? You also involved in the decisions in the company, or you just set some KPIs for the next X months and then they have to somehow report or?
Yeah. So we sit in the board for each of the companies. And prior to the investment, based upon the use of funds and the business plan, we agree on the key KPIs. So they come initially from the founders and the management. We also come back with our feedback and we align together. And it's being tracked on a monthly basis. For some elements, you need to track them faster because you cannot wait. And then, usually we have deeper board discussions for a couple of hours each month. And in between, for any urgent matters, we are there to jump in, help out for a day. For example, talk about the acquisition strategy or talk about the hiring, and then address other things later.
Do you also help with the hiring, like with your connections or with how you're involved in the hiring?
We understand that's super important for our founders, especially if they're first-time founders. It's much easier for the serial ones that have been in the market for a long time and have the network. So we tend to help them. It's usually in this stage between seed and Series A that you need to bring in a COO, and that's something where we saw a couple of good hirings in our portfolio.
There are there are a couple of seed investors and Series A investors in the region. How do you work together in such a small space? I know that a lot of investors usually invest together in one company. So how does it work? So let's say that I contact you and then you say, okay, we are investing together with Fil Rouge or Launch Hub, or how do you help each other? But on one hand, and on the other hand, you're competitors, I guess.
Yeah, I think it really depends from company to company. I think, in a lot of cases, we need to work together because the goal is to build more unicorns from the region. So sometimes they have the complementary skill sets to ours, and we see that for some companies that can work well. Obviously, each fund prefers to lead the round. So if you're the one identifying the right founder first, you want to kind of like maybe control that situation if it's possible. But we are super open, we're super friendly to our colleagues from other funds, and we want to do things together because that's 1 + 1 = 3 or 4. So
cool. Let me check if we have any questions from the audience. If not, yeah, there is one. Is it that's a tricky one. Is it opening companies in the other EU countries a good idea, or should we stay here in the Balkan? Now, there is a lot of differences from the countries. So Slovenia, Bosnia, Croatia. It depends on which country, but what would you suggest? Should we open the company in Estonia and run it from Croatia? Or I also saw a lot of companies moving from Slovenia to Croatia. So what do you suggest your startups to?
I think it's from company to company decision. For us, most of the companies do have the US entity, because if you're targeting US customers, it's much easier to work that way and to have the credibility. In terms of Slovenia versus Croatia, it also depends, which market is where your customers are. I've seen, a number of Slovenian companies that are more focused on Croatia and vice versa. But it's also, related to the regulations. For example, there are a lot of crypto companies opening up Estonian entities. So I tend to think that it's really company by company answer. What's more important that there is a rule of law in this country, and that this cap table can be open for the new investors later on.
Okay.
And what we've seen is also what's happening sometimes, that you flip the main legal entity from one country to another, but then connect the other one as the daughter company.
My last question goes to hiring again. There is a huge demand for the developers, for engineers in the market, not only in the Balkan, everywhere. How can anyone actually help hiring new developers? Because I think there is a huge battle on the market. If you go to USA, if you go to Germany, France, I mean the companies are paying a huge amount of money as a referral for the new developers. How do you see this in the future? And I'm not even asking how do you help companies with hiring developers, but how do you see this the market of engineers?
Yeah, I think each one that we work with has the same challenge. So what we are seeing, and even more important, that in the startups you need the developers that actually have a bit more experience. So not the junior ones that start, because it's hard. So it's important to find the 10x developers, and the number of those is even lower. And I think for me, what's also important is to find the loyal ones. So not the ones that are going to get slightly higher salary and then move to an outsourcing company. So to tell you the truth, it's something that we are working on through our network. We're really trying to have the access to all of the top developers. There are really a couple of good engineering, I would say, academies here. So for example, anyone who used to work at Seven Bridges Genomics in Serbia, or someone who used to work at Remats, these are really strong engineers, and you want to have an access to them, whether through a founder who used to work at these institutions or someone else. But you need to keep track of big part of my job is also meeting developers. So probably a lot of them are not going to be hired immediately in the companies that we invest, but in a year or 2 years or 3 years, that might happen. So I think it's crucial to build relationships with them and to find the 10x and the loyal ones. So it's even probably sometimes more difficult than finding the startup to invest.
Yeah,
but it's a good challenge. And I think we are still probably in better situation than someone in the US or UK. And we still have a lot of people who are working in outsourcing companies, at least here in the region. So we're hoping that maybe some of them would convert and move to startups.
Speaking about outsourcing companies, what's your take on the startups that rent developers from the outsourcing companies? Is it okay, or is it a red flag again?
It can work up to a certain point. So probably until the first money is raised inside the company. So for the pre-seed, it could work. But after that, it's really hard, because your product is changing, your customers' expectations are changing. And if your development team is really only compensated based upon the number of hours or big equity that you share, your interests might not be aligned. So we've seen some good stories started by companies that use outsourcing agencies, but the structure needs to be set up properly from day one. So there is really good alignment, and also there needs to be a plan to have the in-house development team later on. But in any case, I always prefer to have the in-house as early as possible. And whether that's only one engineer for the start, I'm fine with that.
Let's say that Google, Apple, Mailchimp, and all these big guys, they don't have the outsourcing team. The core team is in-house, but they can afford it, luckily. So let me check if we have any more questions from the audience. No. If not, I would really thank you for this pleasant conversation, Pedja, to join us today. This was actually the the last event of the pre-summer season. We will have a pause and work on our education material to start the new sessions in September. We already have 5 talks booked for September and October, so it will be a great autumn. We hope that we can also organize the live event. Let's hope. The last but not least, this event was brought to you by Ancora, development agency from Sarajevo. So thank you guys for introducing me to Pedja. And yeah, once again, Pedja, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Matic. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the summer.